Comma rule number 4 is interrupters. The rule states that commas are used before and after elements that interrupt a sentence. These elements fall into the following categories: non-essential clauses and phrases, appositives and appositive phrases, words used in direct address, and parenthetical expressions. As you can see, this is probably a pretty complicated rule because it has so many different categories, and within those categories you often have to decide whether or not to include the comma, which complicates it further. So this is probably our most difficult comma rule. Alright, let's start with non-essential clauses and phrases, the first kind of interrupter. A non-essential clause or phrase is a clause or phrase that adds information that is not necessary to the main idea in the sentence. So for example, the bank, which closes at 5, is located on Milwaukee Avenue. The main point of this sentence is that the bank is located on Milwaukee Avenue. The fact that it closes at 5, this interrupter here, is helpful information, but it's not relevant to the main point of the sentence. It simply adds bonus information. So we use commas to offset that interrupter. Similarly, Iron Man by Black Sabbath is an excellent song. By Black Sabbath is an interrupter that adds interesting and maybe relevant information, but Iron Man is an excellent song is the main point of the sentence, and this is simply a non-essential interrupter, so again we use commas. Her research is on organic chemistry is the main point of the sentence, which is a very difficult field, is a non-essential interrupter, so again we use that comma to offset the non-essential clause. So in the case of an essential clause, we do not use a comma to offset the interrupter. And basically an essential clause, as you might guess, is necessary to the meaning of the sentence, or it tells which one, and so again, therefore, we do not use a comma. So as an example, will all those who have their tickets please stand in a line to the left? Will all those who have their tickets is an essential interrupter because who have their tickets tell you which one. If you were to remove it and simply read, will all those please stand in a line to the left, the meaning of the sentence has changed. We're not addressing anybody, we're only addressing those who have their tickets. So in that case, it's an essential interrupter and we do not use commas to offset it. Similarly, all taxis that have their lights on are for hire. If we were to remove our interrupter there and simply read, all taxis are for hire, we'd have a different sentence. It's not all taxis that are for hire, but only those that have their lights on. In that case, it's telling us which one, making it essential, and we do not offset that with the commas. A simple little tip that might help you, most clauses or phrases that begin with that are essential, such as this one, and so you don't need a comma, and most that begin with which, such as this one up here, are non-essential and do require one, so that could be a little tip that might help you. Alright, because this is such a complicated rule, this interrupter of non-essential clauses and phrases, we're going to pause and do an exercise just on this one before we get into the other three. So go ahead, pause the video, try exercise 1, and when you're done, restart the video to check your answers. Alright, let's see how you did. Kara, who is undefeated in pie eating contest, wants to be an astronaut. A very clear example of a non-essential clause. Kara, comma, who is undefeated in pie eating contest, comma, wants to be an astronaut. There's no relevance there. It's clearly non-essential, and so you need to use commas to interrupt it. The kites with the short strings are soaring. In this case, it's essential because it's telling us which kites, the ones with the short strings. So because it's telling us which ones, you do not use commas to offset it. Now, suppose you read the sentence a little bit differently and you thought it was just giving us more information, and the main point is the kites are soaring. You might have had an argument that that was actually non-essential. The kites, comma, with the short strings, comma, are soaring. So if you read it that way, you might make a case for including the commas to make it non-essential. But I think it reads pretty clearly that the kites with the short strings are soaring, telling us which kites are soaring, and so it's essential. This one's kind of similar, it depends how you read it. You could read it, the doctor, comma, who specializes in cardiovascular medicine, comma, is performing surgery, in which case it's telling you bonus information about the specialization of the doctor. You might have also read it as, okay, there's 5 doctors and I want to know which one is performing surgery, and I'm answering, oh, the doctor who specializes in cardiovascular medicine is performing surgery. In that case, it's telling us which one, it's essential, and you don't include the commas. So number 2 and 3 probably could go either way depending on how you're reading the sentence. Is it telling us which one, or is it simply giving us more information? And so you could probably make a case for both commas and not commas. At the end of the day, you're the writer, you'll know what you mean, so you'll know whether to include the commas or not depending on how you mean the sentence to read. This one's pretty clearly in need, or not in need of commas. Students who would like to stay after school, can stay after school for a study session. It's telling you which students, it's essential, there's no commas needed in number 4. Number 5 is clearly non-essential. The Lord of the Flies, comma, written by William Golding, comma, is a classic. It's just giving us bonus information that's not necessary. Number 6, the birds that whistle incessantly are driving me crazy. I probably read that as telling me which birds. Oh, the birds that whistle incessantly are driving me crazy, not all the other birds. But again, if you read it as the birds, comma, that whistle incessantly, comma, are driving me crazy, just giving bonus information, you might have chosen to put commas there. And number 7 reads, actors wishing to be successful need an agent. Clearly that's an essential phrase because it's telling you which actors, not just any actors need an agent, but those wishing to be successful need an agent. So we're going to leave the commas off of number 7. So you can see there's a couple cases where it might be debatable whether it's essential or non-essential. On a quiz, we won't give you any debatable questions, but in your writing, you may have to tackle those by knowing what it is you meant to say. So if that's confusing to you, call over your teacher to help you work through that. If not, continue on to the second kind of interrupter. The second one is appositives and appositive phrases. An appositive is basically a noun or pronoun that follows another noun or pronoun to add more information. So for example, Sally, comma, a talented paintballer, comma, asked me over for tea. A talented paintballer is an appositive renaming Sally, so we offset that with commas. Everyone, comma, even Skippy needs to be here on time. Even Skippy is renaming everyone. It's an appositive. We use commas. Lenny likes to pet puppies, a very enjoyable activity. Our appositive, a very enjoyable activity, is replacing pet puppies, so we offset that as a comma, even though it comes at the end of the sentence. So positives are pretty straightforward. If you have an appositive, you put a comma around it. Just a slight exception to that rule, if you're writing and you're determining that the appositive is so closely related to the word preceding it, you might decide a comma is not necessary. So for example, we teachers loved grading. Technically, teachers is an appositive for we, but you could see it would read pretty awkwardly, we, comma, teachers, comma, love grading. So for stylistic purposes, you'd probably breeze through that appositive without including commas. The same thing here, her brother Matt can't be trusted. Matt is an appositive for her brother, but it's such a short, closely related appositive, I'd probably decide to leave commas out. So this is an exception you can decide to take advantage of when you're writing, but in most cases, you're going to offset an appositive with commas, as we did up here. Okay, the next one is words used in direct address. Direct address basically means if someone is directly addressed in a sentence, and in that case, you offset them with commas. So for example, your performance, comma, Billy, comma, is outstanding. This is the direct address. I'm talking to Billy in this sentence, so I need to surround his name with commas. Dad, comma, I have to go to this party. Again, I'm talking to Dad, so I put a comma after his name. Leave me alone, comma, Alfred. Similarly, Alfred is being addressed in the sentence, so I put a comma before his name. That one's pretty straightforward. Anytime you're addressing somebody in a sentence, you put commas before, after, or around that name. And the fourth and final kind of interrupter are parenthetical expressions. These are kind of like our introductory element words that we talked about. Anytime you have a parenthetical expression, you're using a side remark that adds information or relates ideas. So some common parenthetical expressions are consequently, however, moreover, nevertheless, therefore, after all, as a matter of fact, generally speaking, for example, of course, I believe, on the other hand, things like that that you might include in a sentence simply as a parenthetical expression. So for example, she is, comma, however, comma, a giant gossip, or I, comma, therefore, comma, am the smartest man alive, or you should bathe daily, comma, generally speaking, something hopefully we all agree with. So you can see in any of these cases, oops, we should have an underline there, sorry about that. In any of these cases, we're offsetting our parenthetical expression with commas. Pretty straightforward. All right, so those are our interrupter rules. We've now gone through all 4. So pause the video, complete exercise 2, and when you're done, restart the video to check your answers. All right, let's see how we did. So exercise 2 is a series of different kind of interrupters, and we had to decide where commas were necessary. So number 1, I am consequently not allowed to go back to France. So consequently is a parenthetical phrase or word. It interrupts a sentence, and I'm going to surround it with commas. Mildred, a talented pianist, likes to say the word pianist. So Mildred, comma, a talented pianist, comma, we have an appositive, a talented pianist renames Mildred. Mother, comma, you must be joking. Mother is a direct address. I'm talking to mother in that sentence, so I offset her with comma. The baby who has a large birthmark looks like an alien. So again, this is one of those cases where you might decide to or not to include commas depending on how you read the sentence. Let's just say you thought who has a large birthmark is just adding more information. In that case, you would separate it with commas. let's say you thought there was like a baby lineup of 5 different babies, and I said, which one looks like an alien? And you said, oh, the baby who has a large birthmark looks like an alien. In that case, it's telling me which one, and it's essential, so you wouldn't choose commas. So if you understood the reasoning behind either route, you wouldn't be wrong. Again, we won't include an ambiguous example like that on a quiz, but just so you know, sometimes in writing it is ambiguous and you have to know what you mean. All right, number 5. You really should be careful, Frederick. Frederick is direct address. I'm going to put a comma before his name. Everyone, especially Margaret, should be very proud of herself. Everyone, and especially Margaret, that's an appositive. Especially Margaret is renaming everyone, so I need to offset that with commas. Number 7, I really don't care for lima beans, comma, as a matter of fact, it's a parenthetical expression. And last but not least, the 40-year-old man carries around a blanket, comma, which his nana gave to him when he was a boy. Remember, which is usually non-essential. It's just giving us more information, so it's offset with a comma. All right, hopefully you feel pretty comfortable with interrupters. Like I said, those are probably the most complicated of the comma rules, so if you need some help, feel free to ask your teacher. If not, try exercise number 3 and write some sentences of your own.